So if you're on the fence about whether or not you want to pursue your craft, whether or not what you have to say is important, whether or not your opinion is to be heard by other people, I would say get off your ass. What are you waiting for? Because there really is no time like right now. My name is Elicia Gonzales, and I'm originally from Denver, Colorado, but I've lived in Philly for about 12 years now. So I have a background in sexuality education and social work. Most recently was the executive director of Gonzales, which is a queer Latino social justice organization. And when I left that job, I really wanted to take some time to do some soul searching and figure out what the next chapter of my life would be. But during that whole time, while at Gonzales, ever since I was about 18 years old, my passion has been really around sex positivity and infusing sex positive messages in all of the work that I do. So whether it was in reproductive justice, queer rights stuff, working with HIV, I would always do things that would try to bring forward some sort of message that would combat all of the sex negativity that is in our culture, in our society, right? So what I do is somewhat of a loaded question, because I think in our society people assume what you do means like how do you get paid, and that's not me right now. What I'm doing right now is just figuring out like what is my next chapter going to look like, and how am I going to bring my sexual self to that next paid gig. Meanwhile, wanting to collaborate with other folks on doing anything that advances sex positivity in Philadelphia and beyond. Some of the things that I've been doing in Philadelphia over the past several years is really trying to take sexuality conversations, sexuality education outside of the classroom, outside of the bedroom, outside of the doctor's office, and really trying to bring forward to mainstream, Joe Schmo person in the streets. So we've done a few different events. One of them was called Whipped, which was basically like an intro to kink, primarily for women or people who identified as women. So we had, some kink demonstrations, we had some poetry, we had this live interactive poem in which this woman was kind of like a buffet of fruit and whipped cream and chocolate sauce. And the poem was called Feast, and then people could actually eat off of this woman's body. And the whole point of that activity, the first one, is really to get people out of their comfort zones, right? So not everybody's going to go into a sex toy boutique or, feel comfortable talking to their friends about sexuality. So this first, event was really an opportunity to get people talking about sex and sexuality. We did another activity called Cremium, which was sort of a play on the word and the board game Cranium. And it was an interactive game where people were talking about every and anything having to do with sex and sexuality. And the contestants came from just regular audience members who had showed up at that bar. So they had signed up to participate and got really, really close by the end. I'm pretty sure people hooked up afterwards because they had a chance to sort of enact this sexual machine and, what their sexiest play would be. So that was a lot of fun. And then over the past 3 years, with the collaboration of a few great people, Tim Ray Schmidt, David Acosta, Caitlin Reagan, and Tara Lassard, we put together what was called Sex X. And so the first year was Sex X, just Sex X, and it basically was a spin-off of TEDx Talks. So while I was sitting watching a friend of mine do TED Talks, I sat there and said, what would that look like if we did one that was just based on sex and sexuality? Because it's so huge of a topic. And so the first year we had 19 presenters doing anywhere from 3 to 7 minute presentations at the William Way Center on everything from sex, everything including sex and sexuality. So we had how to get a blowjob to how to bottom, to tantric sex, to intro to kink. So it really ran the gamut. Last year we did a 4-day conference that was really, I thought amazing, which is that it had performances, it had an art component, so we had an exhibit, we had a couple dance parties, and then we had the actual workshops, and 3 really phenomenal keynote speakers, all through this queer people of color lens. And that just sort of, again, ran the gamut around sex and sexuality. This year, we brought it back to sort of the basics of having a sex talk that was really about the TEDx style presentations again at William Way. And so the next things on the horizon are going to be things like nude body workshops, maybe doing some art around our body parts and using that in creative ways, and then of course continuing with the sex events. And I would say I got started with it because I recognized that there was a gap, not even just in Philadelphia, but really in the US, of kind of intersecting entertainment and education with sex and sexuality. There are oftentimes, sexuality is really relegated to conversations that are held within a classroom, if you're lucky, or a bedroom, again, if you're lucky. And we're not really having these conversations in mainstream everyday life. And so I knew that there was an opportunity to really bring a fun way of talking about sex and sexuality in a healthy way that was also very interactive, kind of silly, because sex can kind of be silly. That's very honest and inclusive. So it wasn't going to be just about how to put a condom on. It's more along the lines of how do you celebrate your body? How do you, enact your fantasies? What does that even look like to talk with your partner about the kind of sex that you want to have? How do you feel about your own body and your insecurities and what you've been told about the skin you're in? And so my kind of life's work, I feel like, is really to help people feeling more comfortable, more confident in the skin that we're in a way that so we can have a very healthy and pleasurable sex life. So without a doubt, one of my earliest influences was Dr. Ruth. I remember being 18 years old, sitting in a class in my first of 3 colleges that I had gone to, and it was a sexuality class, and thinking, like, wouldn't it be so hysterical if I was to be the next Dr. Ruth? And so for the next, 15 plus years until I went back to grad school, I kept telling everybody, I'm going to be the next Dr. Ruth. I'm going to be a sex therapist. I'm really going to, enter the field and kind of break new boundaries for folks. And so Dr. Ruth was actually this woman who was the first woman I ever saw publicly talking about sex and sexuality on TV. And a lot of people nowadays don't know who she is, but she's this 4-foot little, German lady who would just talk very frankly about sex and pleasure and, how to talk to your partner about what you want. And I was just fascinated by her. And I actually had a chance to meet her at one point, and it was completely disheartening. I had gone up to her, she was doing a book reading, and I went up to her and gave her this envelope with a bracelet that I had that said masturbation on it, because we did this whole event around May, because it's National Masturbation Month for folks who don't know. So I gave her this card basically that said, I love you, you're my influence, thank you so much, with this bracelet. And I think she thought it was some sort of ploy to get her to sponsor me or something. So she looked at it and she's like, what is this? And she threw it across the table. I was completely devastated. So sometimes it's better to have your idols from afar and not really try to get all in their business. But regardless, she taught me that going into the field of sexuality and talking to people about sex is something that's actually possible to do, and not just possible, but it was a calling of mine. And so since that time, I would say that I'm influenced by anything that is pro-sexuality, that's affirming, that celebrates the skin that we're in, that helps to teach people to get rid of some of their inhibitions. It helps people push through boundaries, whether it's boundaries around there's only one way to have a relationship, i.e. monogamy, or heterosexuality, to celebrating the however many partners you want to have sexually. I'm very much rooted in anti-slut shaming philosophy. I always tease people that I'm not that kind of feminist. I love me some, naked girls walking around, and I don't think it's objectification. I think it's me celebrating, the choices that these women are making for themselves. And so I would say I'm deeply rooted in anything that is feminist, I guess a little bit more radical in nature. I'm really excited lately about this whole Free the Nipple campaign, because the double standard that women can't walk around naked is crazy. Very much giving people agency to make controls over their own bodies that make sense for them, versus this rhetoric that a woman, can't be a feminist, can't be independent, and also show her body off. So those are sort of my influences, I would say, over time. I don't have just one favorite movie, but I would say that I have two top favorite movies. The first being The Outsiders from the 1980s. I loved the whole style, the haves and have-nots, if you will, and the camaraderie that really existed between the greasers. I definitely obviously sided with the greasers, kind of the underdogs. And they were all just beautiful, like these beautiful young boys with their like slick back hair, who had very much a better grasp on reality than their, arch nemesis, like the Socs, But I just completely was obsessed with that movie. And, Matt Dillon still like makes my heart pound, thinking about his role, and like pounding the pillow, like with the knife, like, let's do it for Johnny, let's do it for Johnny. So I just feel very drawn to that movie, and the mostly the style of it and the music of it, and the teen angst that comes with recognizing that you don't have as much as somebody else, and then being okay with that and kind of overcoming some of that struggle. The second movie, which is a sharp contrast to that movie, is Silence of the Lambs, and it kind of goes to show my personality. I actually was an international business major before, and then I watched that movie, Silence of the Lambs, and I said, nope, I want to go into psychology. So something about that movie kind of spoke to maybe this dark side of me, and this quest for learning more about human behavior, our motivations, what gets us off, our fantasies. I was really drawn to the character that wasn't really transsexual, but was really sort of, walking the line between who he was as a person and trying on skin, quite literally. And so that movie I could literally watch back to back to back to back. I think just the fact that there was this female, very badass character as the lead kind of heroine also was very appealing, and the fact that it was Jodie Foster, that's bonus points. But that movie was just very seductive and very dark, and caught me to change my path from business, which would have been a disaster, to psychology. So yeah, that's a good one. So I would very much love to collaborate with my co-conspirators in crime who we've been collaborating with for some time, which of course is Tim Marie, David Acosta, Susan DePronio, Caitlin Reagan, and Tara Lessard. Those are all some amazingly talented, passionate, hardworking people in Philadelphia who are also equally interested in advancing a sex-positive mission, if you will, through all kinds of different means, whether it's burlesque dancing, whether it's photography, whether it's art, whether it's poetry. All of those mediums are ways in which we're wanting to kind of push the boundaries around sex and sexuality in Philadelphia. There's also this really amazing graphic artist in New York called Sophia Wallace, and she does this whole effort called Cliteracy, where she has posters that spell out the clit, and just in a very, very beautiful font. So I would love to figure out a way to do some sort of art show with her, maybe some interactive conversation, etc. And then if I had, all of the money in the world to somehow bring back somebody from the grave, I would be floored to be able to work with Prince, who to me was the first representation of an embodied being, super, super sexual, very positive, very sexy, just really embodied to me what it meant to be confident and competent in who you were as a person. And for me, I think he was the first representation of queer, long before there was language for it in my little vocabulary, and long before I even was able to put my finger on, the differences and the ways in which people kind of represent their sexuality. But how cool would it be to have this concert, with Prince, maybe like more back in the day Prince, like lace over the eyes, wearing the tight pants kind of Prince, like Purple Rain Prince, and then to have some sort of like art show, maybe some, sex educational workshops, some poetry, things like that. I would literally probably be okay to die the next day if that were to ever be able to happen. Most people probably know that my favorite musician is Prince, without a doubt. So for my 40th birthday, actually, my wife surprised me and blindfolded me, walked me into what was going to be the party for me for my birthday. And as the blindfold came off, the DJ played Kiss by Prince, and lo and behold, all of the people there were dressed in some sort of different iteration of Prince. A good friend of mine actually shaved his beard, which he had for more than 5 years, so he could take on this persona of Prince. So to me, he just is the embodiment of sexiness, of confidence, of unapologetically queer, of unapologetically sexy. And of course, he's also a musical genius. But I would be remiss if I also didn't put in there that my other favorite artist is Bjork, who to me is just sheer genius. She's been rocking out since she was 11 years old. To me, it's a real prodigy, and I could listen to her music all day long, every single day, and never grow tired of it, and probably never repeat the same song again, because she just has such a wealth of music out there. And I think that I feel like I'm most myself when I'm listening to either Prince or to Bjork. They just speak to this deep, deep part of me, and I feel like when I'm needing that extra oomph, whether it's going into having a hard conversation with somebody or getting ready to have a sexy playtime with my wife, those are usually the two artists that I'll turn to help me bring out my best me and feel very powerful and very much in my element with Bjork and Prince. I would say that my philosophy is to unapologetically live out loud. When I was younger, my family used to give me a hard time because I always used to, like to go hard, work hard, play hard. And to me, that's what life is about. I can sleep when I'm dead. Let's go out and have a good time. And also sit at home and watch Netflix all day as long as you're having a good time, right? So living out loud, finding joy and seeking pleasure in all aspects of life, whether that's in sex and sexuality, in the clothes that you wear, the wine that you drink, the food that you consume. Life is way too short to be down or to be living, from a fear-based place. Live from a place of love and be pleasure-seeking and joy-seeking and live out loud. So it's not one easy mission statement, but in all that, you should be able to get something from that. If you're on the fence about whether or not you want to pursue your craft, whether or not what you have to say is important, whether or not your opinion is to be heard by other people, I would say get off your ass. What are you waiting for? Because there really is no time like right now. I don't like YOLO, but really this is just one life to live. There's no second chances at this. And people are needing you to be you. You need to be your full self, and that's all, nothing more. So I know that if we get hung up on comparing ourselves to one another, you think you don't have enough time, you don't have enough talent, you don't have enough resources, just start. Just put one foot in front of the other and get started. And you're not necessarily worrying about selling to the masses. You're worried right now about how am I going to be my best me and share that with the world, right? That's what needs to happen. That's what we need more of, that kind of creative energy. And that's the only thing that I think is really going to combat a lot of the negativity, a lot of the anxieties and fears that we have in our society, is because people hold ourselves back, right? But knock down that wall, get off your ass, put one foot in front of the other, and just be you. Just start there. People can find me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Snapchat, and they can find me either by Elicia Gonzales or Elicia G.